Hey there, friends. Are you a planner? I'm a planner. I love to plan, and when I plan, I make lists. I make lists of all sorts. Every week, I make a list of all the things we're going to eat for dinner, and I make a list of the things we need to make those dinners before I go grocery shopping. When I'm going on a trip or vacation, I make a packing list before I actually put things in my suitcase. And I even have a list of all the Christmas gifts I'm giving this year. So how do you plan? And what happens when your expectations are not met? That means when things don't go exactly as you planned them. Do you get upset and angry, or do you freak out, or do you go with the flow? Sometimes it's a good thing when your expectations are not met. Earlier this week, I had planned to make chicken and Brussels sprouts one night for dinner, but we ran out of time and ended up eating pizza. Well, my kids were certainly not disappointed about that expectation not being met. But last spring, when two of my sons were supposed to be a part of musicals at school and they got canceled with the shutdown, well, when that expectation wasn't met, they were really bummed. A lot of expectations that we had for this past year were not met. But some good things came out of this past year too. Like, I get to experience 3 different church services every morning at 3 different churches every Sunday morning, because so many churches are doing a virtual live stream. And my middle schoolers get to sleep in 2 extra hours every morning because they're doing virtual school and they don't have to get up and go to school. They can go to school in their jammies. And a lot of people have learned a lot about technology and how technology can help us make connections with other people and how we can achieve so much through technology. And many families were forced to slow down because so much was canceled, and they were forced to spend more time together, which for a lot of people ended up being a really good thing. When we're planning something, we always hope that things will go just as we planned them, that things will turn out just exactly as we'd like. But sometimes God knows better. In Luke chapter 1, it talks about a priest named Zechariah. Now, Zechariah never expected to have a baby because he thought his wife couldn't have children. And besides that, they were very old. But an angel came to him one day and told him that his wife was going to have a baby. And not just any baby, but a very special baby who would prepare the world for the Messiah. Now, the Messiah was someone that the Jews expected that God was going to send to them to save them and be their king. Many people probably expected the Messiah to be a great and mighty warrior, or perhaps a very regal king. Would their expectations be met? We'll find out more about that next week. Well, Zechariah had a hard time believing the angel at first because it wasn't what he expected. And because of that, God took away his voice. And he couldn't talk until his baby was born. He had to communicate with gestures and hand motions. Have you ever played the game charades? Can you imagine living like that for months? Well, shortly after Zechariah was visited by an angel came to his wife Elizabeth's cousin, a relative of hers, named Mary. Now, Mary was nobody special. She was just a teenager, a servant girl who was engaged to a man named Joseph. And she probably expected that day to finish her chores and on a later day to marry this guy Joseph and eventually start a family with him, and probably expected just to lead a normal, simple life. But the angel told her that she was also going to have a baby. And not just any baby, but this time she was going to have the Messiah, the actual promised Savior, God's Son. Well, as shocked as Mary was, she believed the angel, and she felt honored and blessed and humbled that God chose her to be the mother of his son, even though her life would be nothing like she expected it. It was also not what her fiancé Joseph expected of their life, and it took him a while to adjust to this information and this new plan, but eventually Mary and Joseph accepted this change of plans. Now Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth did have a son, and they named him John, and he was later known as John the Baptist. And he told everybody about the coming Messiah. And Mary and Joseph also did have a son, and they named their son Jesus, and he was the Messiah. And he grew and eventually saved the world from sin and death by dying on the cross and raising back to life 3 days later. You know, I don't think that Zechariah or Elizabeth or Mary or Joseph ended up having the life that they expected at all. But as usual, God's plans were better than the human plans, and thankfully they all willingly obeyed, and God was able to change their plans and save the world. What are your expectations for this Christmas? My son expected to be in another musical this month, but that expectation was not met. My family was supposed to go see a show at the fireside. That expectation was not met. And we expected this season to be able to go to movies or to go visit relatives that live far away. Well, those expectations are not going to be met either. But maybe God has better plans for us. When things don't go the way that you planned, it's important to be like Mary and trust that God knows best, and that maybe, just maybe, his plan is better than anything that you could ever imagine.